In today's video, we're going to be discussing each and every Chelsea player and how Liam Rosenior is going to use them. Okay, so as a follow-on from yesterday's video, I will instantly say go check that out if you haven't already, because that has got all the details of how Liam Rosenior set up at Strasbourg and his tactical principles, his philosophy, on-ball, off-ball, all of these things. But I want to do a separate video to talk about how each player will fit into that and how each player's role could differ, because I think there's so many different players to talk about when it comes to sort of highlighting what they could be under Liam Rosenior. Now, the first one is the goalkeeper. Now, both Jorgensen and Sanchez in this respect. And that's because of their roles on the ball that we spoke about yesterday, where, especially in possession, those centre-backs will split. If I just quickly put it into this now, you'd have those sort of two very De Zerbian build-up. Again, the details are more so in yesterday's video. But you've got the goalkeeper who's going to have to be involved in that build-up play with the ball. And from here, it's, again, something that these players, they're going to have to just be confident to do it and not make mistakes, which is something, again, I think could be an issue with the goalkeeper making some errors, because they are going to be encouraged to do this and to play and to bait the press. So in this aspect, you could say Jorgensen is a better option, especially once those rotations sort of take place and you end up where you push one player forward and it sort of rotates where the goalkeeper is part of the back four. You'd probably say Jorgensen is better with that sort of short circulation passing and sort of almost baiting the press to make easy passes in short circulation and then help to play out through triangles and reach the final third. You'd probably say Jorgensen's better equipped for that. However, I think that the disparity between their ability on ball and a disparity between their ability off the ball means that Sanchez will just keep his spot, because his shot stopping in comparison to Jorgensen is just night and day. And I think Sanchez has had such a good season that you just cannot drop him. Now, the interesting thing will be how much does Rosenior sort of adapt his on-ball responsibility in the same way Maresca did to sort of limit those errors. That will be what's interesting. But the other interesting factor will be Mike Penders next year, who played the role under Rosenior, got a lot of he was getting used to the role really nicely. He was confident in these areas. He's as well got that similar sort of shot stopper frame. He's extremely sort of talented in both respects. So that will be the question next season, to see how much that changes, whether Sanchez keeps the number one and Penders pushes him for his spot next year and Jorgensen ends up leaving. Maybe he goes to Strasbourg. That'll be a really interesting dynamic next season. But that's how I think the goalkeepers will sort of take their spots this year. I think it will be Sanchez. Jorgensen may be playing some cup games. Maybe Jorgensen plays in his first game against Charlton at this weekend because he's the cup goalkeeper, and we see how advanced he is on the ball in that game. Moving on to the central defenders. Now, Levi Colwill, we're not going to speak about in this video, but I will just say, like, he would be perfect, of course, to be that sort of central centre-back once the ball moves up, but then also in the first phase to be able to sort of split the defenders and become what Trevor Chalobah is here and create that 4-2-5-1 or 4-2-4-1, sorry, or 4-2-5 with one player pushing up when the goalkeeper pushes into the back four. But when it comes to the defenders, what we've got on screen here, we've got Trevor Chalobah, we've got Wesley Fofana. We'll talk about the central defenders first. We've got Joshua Chempong, we've got Badia Shil, and we'll talk about Adarabioyo as well. Tosin. So, of this group, Wesley Fofana and Joshua Chempong are the two sort of defenders that I think suit this role, of course, where they're going to peel out and be in this sort of right back position once the right back pushes forward to provide the width. So they have good recovery pace. They're comfortable on the ball in these wide areas. Again, a Chempong especially, but also Fofana, he's so good at this. From this area, can they create? Can they sort of like bounce the ball inside, but can they drive the ball inside from here as well? This is something that someone like a Chempong could do extremely well, and that's why he could be really impactful under someone like Rosenior. They've got the defensive prowess, again, to be those players that are going to recover quickly and off the ball. It is very important, because once they drop into a 5, if we just take all of this off here, once the team are in a 5, let's say that it's either Wes or a Chempong, and Neto drops in and it sort of forms this shape off the ball. Again, these shapes can vary. If you watch yesterday's video, you'll know the different shapes that you could go into. It's very important that these two players, and again, this can be formed in different ways. This could be two fullbacks. This could be a centre-back and a defensive mid. This could be two wide central defenders, a wide centre-back and a fullback. It could be different ways of achieving this shape. But whoever it is in these areas have to be willing to step aggressively into these half spaces. So again, talking about this role being either a Chempong or Wesley Fofana, that makes a lot of sense because they are aggressive. They can do that. They're physical. They've got those capabilities to do both the on and off ball situations that they need to do. And then on the other side of the pitch, we'll touch on him in a minute. Cucurella has the same ability on that side of the pitch. In terms of a central centre-back, somebody who can become the central centre-back, but also, again, has to step into these wider areas to split the centre-backs. I think Chalobah is obviously with sort of keeping things similar to what they've been so far. Fofana and Chalobah have grown a bit of a connection. I think Chalobah will be, and again, he's a leader. I think Rosenior is so like he wants to build those connections. I think Chalobah is somebody he will build a connection with straight away because of how like sort of good of a person that Trev is. But also, I think he's like right now he's one of the better suited to play this role. The other player I could see doing this is Badiashile. And again, that's because he can drift into this wider area when Sanchez comes onto the ball and he can help to progress play. He's progressive in those central areas here. And again, the main one that you would say on ball, again, is Tosin. And maybe, just maybe, in this system, because he will be a little bit more protected when he's here. Now, rest defense moments will be worrying when Tosin's in the team. But I do wonder if Rosenior will try to platform, like try to protect Tosin so that you can get him in the team for his on-ball abilities in here. Because again, when you're looking to bait the press, someone like Tosin who's willing to fire those balls between the lines, he could be important as that central centre-back role. And then again, when they split, he can be in these areas to progress play as well. So I'm going to keep an eye on Tosin and see what they do with him because he's an interesting one. But like I said, I think Trev is mainly the one that we could see in this sort of role. But again, into the defensive aspect of things, because he's the central centre-back, once they're sort of collapsing into a back five, he has this protection. But when one jumps forward, he then does have to cover the space in behind. So that will be an important aspect of sort of knowing when these players are going to jump that he has to cover. And yeah, how passive he is once that ball goes into the striker, he'll often get 1v1s in here. That's another area for concern, maybe, if he's not sort of switched on. So that's something we have to keep an eye on. In terms of defenders, that sort of covers us on what I think the usage will be for centre-backs. Now let's talk about the fullbacks because this is really interesting. So we've got Cucurella, James, Hato, and Gusto. Now, again, all different roles, in my opinion, to how they'll be used. Cucurella is an interesting one because I think, for me, Cucurella is a player that he will almost exclusively be used as a left centre-back, whether that be you're starting a back five or a back three and you've got wing backs like this, or whether it be, again, you're starting a 4-2-3-1 and Cucurella is the left back and you've got another right back, so James or Gusto. I don't think we'll see Cucurella as that left wing back holding width. I think he will almost exclusively be used to tuck in and create that three here, which means the right back is going to be the one that is used to hold the width. Now, the exception of this is how Woutara was used at Strasbourg. The only way I could see, I don't think Cucurella is going to be holding width. What I could see him doing is if we're starting another width holder on this side, let's say Jamie Gittins is playing here. I could see a world in which Cucurella inverts into the pocket and you keep those touchline wingers as Gittins and Esteval, or Gittins and Neto, Gittins and whoever. And then the back three is formed with the right back tucking in. But I don't think that they'll use Cucurella as an outside profile to have a sort of left-sided player in there. So that's how I think Cucurella will be used. But like I said, almost exclusively, I do think it will be tucking into that back line, which then means the right back's role is really important because it means that they're going to then have to sort of push up and hold the width. So that's either going to be Reece James, who everybody knows the talent that Reece has and how he needs to be in the team. But if we talk about Gusto first, because he just suits this role perfectly, whether he's starting right back or whether he's starting as a right wing back and Neto starting as a left wing back, as an example, these are your outside profiles that Gusto's going to get forward, get balls into the box like early, and he can hold the width and he can be a combative sort of option off the ball, but he can also combine with somebody like Esteval or Cole, whoever's playing on the right and drifting inside. He can combine with them and have a good connection on that right-hand side. So I think Gusto will be used almost exclusively in this role. And he will be a winner from this move. But not because Maresca, in my opinion, was using him poorly, because I still think that he was extremely important for us. But I think he'll be a winner in the sense that Rosenior will value his skill set in a similar way to how Maresca valued his skill set, but he'll use it slightly differently. So that will be something that a lot of us are keen to see, I guess. The other option, of course, like I said, is Reece James. Now, what will be interesting, and one of the key sort of questions from this, is how does he platform Reece James? Because Reece, we need to protect him. So does he do this role once a week, if he can do it? Or does he become an option in midfield so that you can use Gusto here more often and you can get them both in the team? Or does he start a back five but only start one natural centre back, because he did this at Strasbourg quite a bit, and you technically start one natural centre back and then two sets of fullbacks or wing backs? You've got your Reece James and Cucurella as your natural fullbacks, and then you've got Gusto and Neto as sort of your wing backs. I wouldn't be surprised if he did that at times against maybe sort of weaker opposition to, again, and again, this could even be a right winger. This could be Neto and Garnacho as the wing backs, which people will hate to hear, but it really depends, or Gittins and Neto. It depends how sort of the team that we're playing against, but I wouldn't be surprised to see both Cucurella and James tucking in as those wide centre backs, because again, when we spoke about their off-ball responsibility to jump into the pockets, if I get Fernandez back on screen, they can be aggressive in these areas, and Reece can do that. He's strong. Cucurella, we know he has that capacity as well. So that will be interesting to see how he sort of moves with Reece James. Now, the one I wanted to talk about quite a bit was Gerald Hato, because I think he could really, really benefit from this move from Liam Rosenior. Firstly, because, like I said, he can play as a left centre-back in a back three, and he can be the guy to be aggressive and jump into these areas. He's so good at that. He has the recovery pace. He adds a lot of athleticism that we need in the back line, and he becomes a really sort of big addition, especially if you don't have Wes in the team. He can be so key for that extra athleticism and tracking the ball in behind, especially when Rosenior wants to play a bit of a higher line in a certain game to try and force the ball, sort of force the opposition to play long. Hato could be really important. But the main reason, again, those defensive qualities are key. The main reason I'm really intrigued by the prospect of Hato is, again, if we push these other players forward and how it would form sort of, let's say, like this shape. Let's say like this, the back four. Hato in these areas, in the same way that we spoke about, say, Josh, and again, Reece, if he's in this right centre-back area, gives you that option to play diagonal. We spoke about yesterday that the impact of being diagonal from these areas and trying to find these entry passes, which can spark combinations and really almost inject the pace. I think these players in these wider areas are so key to being progressive and brave and injecting that bit of pace with the diagonal entry pass to then allow these players, Esteval, Palmer, João Pedro dropping deep, Fernandez sort of moving forward into this area and allowing these players to come to life. It's a bit of a spark plug there, almost like lighting the ignition. And again, I think Hato for this role, with those left-footed angled passes inside diagonal, I think he's better at that than Cucurella. And I think that that's something, again, in build-up and in something that Rosenior will be looking for. Hato has a chance to sort of stake a claim in the team for that reason. Now, I don't think he's going to take Cucurella's spot. I'm not saying that, because Cucurella is one of the more experienced. He fits the system as well. I think he's less progressive on the ball and less sort of able than Hato in those deeper phases of baiting the press. But there's other aspects that Cucurella brings with the experience and his 1v1 defending and things like that. So I'm not saying he will outright take his spot, but Hato is one to watch because I think he does suit the way that Rosenior will want to play and the aggression, tenacity, athleticism, bravery, and all these things that he will like. So Hato is an interesting one. And I think, of course, with Cucurella being out now, he will play against Charlton, almost certainly. So that will be another interesting one to see how Rosenior decides to platform him. Moving away from defenders, which is interesting because we've been going for about 15 minutes. So if you're enjoying the video, please do leave a like. It really, really does help me out if you just leave a like, comment, everything that you can do to help push the video really, really helps me out. And I thank you lot immensely for the support. So now let's talk about sort of the other areas of the team. Let's start with the midfield. Like if we go to the midfield now. So let's talk about Caicedo, Fernandes, Santos, Lavia, and Asugo. Now, instantly, let's just talk about Lavia because this role would be perfect for him in terms of press resistance, continuously getting the ball and having to either sort of combine to get it out wide or to take it on the back foot and turn and play through. Like we all know Lavia is absolutely brilliant in this role and can really help you to play through baited pressure. But his injury issues are going to be a thing. So I just wanted to mention him, but it's almost not worth talking about him too much because I think the other four are going to be more important at this point. Asugo, very much think he'll be, again, used sporadically. I think, especially now with Rosenior and the emphasis is going to be on baiting the press. I think he's going to need even more time to come back from injury and really be up to speed. So I think the main three and I like Asugo, I think he'll get minutes off the bench in cup games. I think he's still going to come like really good for this team. But under Rosenior to begin with, I think the three that we're talking about are these three and potentially Reece James, like I said earlier. And the reason for that is, let's start with Enzo Fernandez, because I think he is the really interesting one that many people will sort of think about. Because against low blocks, I think we'll use him in this deeper area. So I think a bit like Valentin Barco, Fernandez will have that license to be this player who can sort of roam in this first phase, get on the ball. Again, he has to be part of these triangles in the first phase of build-up. But then he has the ability to roam and leave Caicedo, and he can go into these areas and create these left-sided triangles over here. He can end up like being this +1 attacker with the front five to get in the box and be a bit more sort of dangerous. But also just have the license that Barco had to play these through balls and look to really, again, pump the ignition and start getting the ball into these players and with pace so that it kickstarts the attack and really sort of speeds things up and turns it from that slower speed to the high speed. And I think Fernandez could be that sort of spark plug in there. Now, the differences are the fact that he's not as mobile as Barco. So I think in terms of Barco making those sort of like big runs out to the left a lot and making sometimes overlaps, sometimes going all the way into the channel and overlapping and allowing these players to combine. I don't think Fernandez is going to do that. I think he's going to want one of these players to do that run instead whilst he keeps the ball. But in terms of, again, the quality he has on the ball, it's clearly there. So the mobility of this role is something I have a little bit of a concern about. But against lower blocks, especially, I think that he'll still be absolutely fine doing this. And again, has the quality to sort of make decisions from there that will help. It's in the bigger games where I think we could actually see one of the sort of pocket players that we're going to speak about in a minute of Esteban and Palmer, one of them sacrificed to be Fernandez further forward and have Santos in a double pivot. Again, like we saw a little bit yesterday, where these are the two that are sort of in the deeper roles and Fernandez is a little bit higher up. Now, again, it could be either side. It doesn't really matter for these two in the deeper phases because then they can push forward. And again, Santos would be the more mobile of the two that can go and join. Not that he's more mobile than Caicedo, but he can be the more dynamic of the two who can go and join the attacks. And again, Caicedo could do it as well because Santos is so comfortable sitting in this area as well that they can sort of alternate that role. But I think in those tougher games, we could see that midfield three used to give us that extra little bit of domination against the bigger teams and the more physical teams. And having these two in there together gives you such a good physical base. Now, again, this could be also the case with Reece. Reece could go and do this role. This could be, that could be Wes. And Reece could do this in the same way. And that could be the role that Reece plays under Rosenior. Because then, again, it protects him a little bit better, keeps him in this role. He's clearly good under pressure, receiving in these areas on the ball, being press resistant, playing out. And then again, it still allows you to use Gusto, Fofana in these different roles as well. So the midfield's going to be really interesting. I think Santos will play a massive part, whether he's starting a lot of games, whether he's getting a lot of minutes from the bench. I think he's just going to be a really important part of the team now. And I think that that's a benefit that will come from this change of bringing Rosenior in. That's one of the things that we know we've now got trust in our midfield unit. Whereas under Maresca, the trust was clearly in Fernandez, Caicedo and Reece, and not so much in Santos. So that is obviously a part of that. Now, moving on to the attacking unit, we're going to put this sort of back to one way it could look like. Let's say James is attacking, let's say Casado and Enzo are the deeper two, for example. And now let's look at the sort of pocket players higher up. You've got Palmer and you've got Esteban. These are the two pocket players we spoke about earlier on. Now, again, the wing back, we've got the right back who's pushing forward, and we'll talk about the left winger in a minute. But if the right back is the one pushing forward, it means the left winger is going to be the one that's occupying that width, or left wing back if you're starting in a three at the back. So we'll talk about that left wing back, left wing role in a minute, because I think that's going to be a bit of a hybrid role, and it's an interesting one to talk about. But the pocket players will then become your number 10 and the right winger who's drifting inside, because as that right back pushes forward, they push inside. So this could easily be Cole pushing from right wing to inside and Esteban the 10. It could be vice versa. And there's lots of different ways that you can do this. Now, instantly, these players have the license to drop into these pockets that we spoke about yesterday, get on the ball, and then they can drive inside, they can combine, they can help, they can sort of drift out wide and have those combinations with the wing back / wingers, get the double width. They have so much freedom, these two players. I think they're going to thrive under Rosenior, because once that ball gets into the final third, and like I keep saying, the ignition is ignited, they're going to sort of speed things up, and then their creativity can become whatever it wants to be. The freedom they have under Rosenior in these roles, and to even like go really tight together and combine and have the striker dropping in with them, and like I say, drift over to this side of the pitch to combine in a triangle and have those double width moments where Palmer can actually get the ball on the outside. Same with Esteval or Palmer over here. There's lots of different ways of doing it, but the freedom these guys are going to get is going to be key. And I think for Palmer, whether it's off the right going in or being the number 10, this will almost exclusively be his role. And again, in the build-up, which we'll speak about in a minute, where we spoke about, if we knock it all back like this, the build-up, Palmer would be, again, on the inside, and you'd have it where, say, Palmer is receiving in these pockets still. So I think almost exclusively Palmer will be that pocket player. I think Esteval will get used maybe in a variation of inside and outside roles, again, depending on who's at right wing back or right back. That will be very interesting to see. But the other interesting one is João Pedro, because if we now quickly move all this forward again, João Pedro could become, if Palmer's playing on the right, João Pedro could easily be one of these players as well, deeper. Let's say Delap takes the striker role. And let's say João Pedro is now playing as the nominal 10, or even as a left winger dropping inside, but he becomes one of these pocket players now too, where these players are holding the width, and now João Pedro can drop into these areas and get on the ball. And like I said, he can be creative, he can drive the ball forwards, he can combine out wide, and it gives him a little bit more freedom and range to go and perform. And I think that this is something that we saw him do really well in that left half space at Brighton. And he did that under De Zerbi as well, sort of coming inside from the left-hand side. So I think that João Pedro, again, a bit like Esteval, where he'll maybe be used as a bit of an inside and outside profile. I think João Pedro could be used as sort of a deeper inside profile or as a striker, depending on the game and how Rosenior wants to set up. So João Pedro, a bit like Hato, is another one where I want to see, and even Reece, because I want to see how Rosenior looks to set those guys up and the different ways that he's sort of willing to platform them. But I think the main three inside profiles for those, or the main four, if you count Enzo Fernandez higher up, would be Enzo, João Pedro, Palmer, and Esteval as those sort of pocket inside players, like your Encisos, like your Nanassis for Strasbourg. If we just move it back, we'll talk about the striker position in a minute. So now let's talk about that left wing role, because that's really important, like I said. I think the reason it's so important is because they're going to be holding width on this left-hand side. Now, whether you see it as a 4-2-3-1 or whether you see it as a 3-4-3, this left-sided player is naturally going to be the one holding the width unless there's an overlapping left back in a back four. And right now, I don't see Cucurella or Hato doing that. So that, to me, says that this left-hand side, whether it's a left wing back or a left winger, is going to be one of Neto, Garnacho, or Gittins, which we'll speak about a little bit more in a minute, because he's an interesting one for me, Gittins. But Neto and Garnacho, they're players I could see playing this left wing back role. But also the idea is that they're still a touchline left winger on the ball. So they need to streamline their games. They're going to get touches when the ball is sort of moved out to them. Can they combine with their number 10? Can they quickly get crosses into the box, which is something that we saw last night? Rosenior in the stands was almost not mocking Neto's sort of time to make the decision and get the ball into the box, but you could tell that he had an issue with it and he was sort of like analysing it in the stands. So I think that, again, he wants to streamline these players. They're almost what they're going to do. They're going to get the ball. They're going to be quick, 1-2 touch, get the ball, get it into the box early. And early crosses is something we spoke about in yesterday's video, which is an aspect of his sort of attacking ideas and something he likes to emphasize. And I think that they have the intensity to do the job off ball as that wing back when dropping into that back five that we spoke about earlier. So that's why Neto and Garnacho are the two that I can see playing there most. Gittins is a really interesting one because Gittins he's someone that he could do this role. He will still get the ball in these left wing positions high up, and he can be 1v1 with the sort of, the fullbacks. But will he be able to do the defensive work is one thing, and how Rosenior gets through to him. I think Gittins could be one that we don't see lots of at the start, but eventually, depending on, again, Rosenior's such a good man manager, how can he get through to Gittins? Because the raw athleticism that Gittins has, if you can get him doing that role really, really well, especially against lower block teams where he still has to be switched on defensively, but if he is switched on enough to do that, in those low block games, if you can have Gittins playing as essentially he's a left winger, but he just has to be the slightly more passive because, say, you've got Cole out on the right or Esteval out on the right, who you're trying to leave a little bit further forward and protect. If Gittins can do that with the athleticism he's got to get up and down, it's like I say, I think that it could be make or break for Gittins. It could actually work really well for him, but it just depends how Rossini gets through to him. Because, again, I think if he can get into those areas where he's getting the ball in those wide areas 1v1 and and he has the confidence to sort of shift and go quick and really make his decisions on the fly, because I think the attacking style of Rossini will actually suit Gittins in the sense of once this ball hits the final third, that pace goes up. Under Maresca, the idea was still to build as a team into the final third. The key difference, I think, is that once this ball almost crosses into the final third, that pace goes through the roof. And the idea is to not let that defense settle and to go quick and to get a shot away and to make something meaningful happen, which is why I think Palmer and Esteval could sort of thrive and just be allowed to have fun with it, really, and be free. So that's interesting when it comes to Gittins, but it will obviously come down to whether he can do the role off the ball as well and how Rossini gets through to him. Now, lastly, we'll talk about the strikers. Now, is there any subs that I haven't spoke about as well? Because the lap is obviously the main one, but we'll also talk about João Pedro in the attacking role. I think other than that, we've spoke about everyone, so that's good. When it comes to these two, I think, like I said earlier, I think Pedro could be used in multiple different ways. That will be interesting. But if we talk about the lap, he could be so key under Rosenior for so many different reasons. And I'm going to do something now which takes everybody else off the screen. But it's especially here because, right, if we start from build-up and Delap's your striker, what's more likely going to happen is these two will be your pocket players. And instead, what he's done at times is, and he could be in here, but what he's done at times with Panicelli is put the striker out wide. And obviously what this gives is Delap's going to have a matchup with a fullback. So what it essentially gives you straight away is an outlet, because if they do press really high, can you get the ball out to Delap who can secure it and then maybe try and sort of get inside to these creative players in there? Can he get the ball from Reece straight into him? Can he secure play? Can he let someone like Reece get round him, Esteval get round him and combine and run him behind? He can run the channel. I think there's lots of things he can do in that first build-up position. But then once play does sort of shift forward, and we speak about that usual shape that we were speaking about earlier, one, he's an outlet through the middle here. But two, as well, where we're trying to get those early crosses, if we can work the ball into these wide areas and get early crosses into Delap, he has a better chance of getting on the end of those with the way that his clever movements when he's starting a little bit deeper and then making a clever run rather than being fixed against the lower block and basically getting the early crosses in before it can get set. That will be really interesting to see with Delap. And he's worked with Rosenior before, so he's another one that could benefit in that sense. He knows how to work with him. He knows how to make him click. And I think that, yeah, the striker in general, it could be a really good sort of platform for Delap to perform at a high level. And like I said, you've still got João Pedro. Omega could be one that we're speaking about in the summer. It depends what happens. with Rosenior and how things are going to go. But yeah, I do think the way this squad could be used by Rosenior in terms of getting the best out of a lot of the players here could be really, really good. And it's going to be really exciting to see how a lot of them are platformed. If you've got any questions about specific players, let me know. This has been a bit of a long video. I'm going to do a live stream tomorrow as well, where I can hopefully speak things through. So that will probably be around midday UK time on Friday. So don't miss that. Come and join the live stream. You can ask me questions there. If not, leave your questions in this video. Try and get back to them. Like I said, all support is appreciated. Please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I will see you guys in the next one.